Yeah, I don't need any rice. Lunchtime. Hey, so I woke up this morning and I thought, John, your vlogs are pretty boring. Which is true, and it doesn't really bother me. But I thought, you know what? I need to change things up. I need to do a little bit. I need to do something different just so that I can get through the next few months, because I've got a personal challenge of finishing a year of vlogging every single day. And if I burn out and lose steam and lose motivation, then that's no good for anyone. But more importantly, I don't get to finish the project that I started, and that's my fault. So I thought I would share a little bit more about how I put together my side projects. In particular, I've been working very lightly on a new app, which is a to-do list app. I know, go figure. And you know, there have been tens of thousands, maybe even more, probably more, of to-do list apps that have been created. So the thing that I'm building is not distinctly unique, but I think the most important thing is it is uniquely mine. I have actually never built a to-do list app that I actually committed to, and what I mean by that is I have built to-do list apps before, because that's like literally the first thing you do when you start learning Objective-C and iOS programming. In Swift is there's a to-do list app that Apple has in the developer docs. I highly recommend you do that. In fact, we actually may walk through that together. But I thought, you know what, might as well share a little bit more about the process I go through from start to finish. And I've done this historically on my blog, but I actually have never captured it on a vlog. So I thought that might be of interest to you, that might be an interest to nobody, but it'll certainly give me a theme to execute against over the coming months and as I continue to put things together. So with that being said, here's how I start building small web apps, products, and the process by which I do that. So the very first thing that I do is I start pretty much every project in one of these things. I'm a huge fan of notebooks and physical products. I work through Moleskine notebooks, which is my favorite type of company and product line, although I will use many different types of notebooks. But in particular, I really like Moleskine, and I know that there are many different ways to actually pronounce that. Moleskine, Moleskine. I don't think anyone actually knows. This is a new big one, and so what I do is a couple things. Is first, and I told you this would be sharing the very small minutia, is I timestamp everything, because I think it's important to know how long you've been working on a project. But I open a new piece of paper and I start sketching out what I essentially feel like is going to be the workflow. Actually, let me take a big step back. Let's before we jump into this, let me talk very briefly, hopefully briefly, about how and why I build anything to begin with. I build products first and foremost to serve myself. It's a very selfish motive, but it's a very useful motive. And it's essentially this idea, which I've talked about many times before, of scratching your own itch. You should solve your own problems first. When you solve your own problems first, you are uniquely positioned to create a solution set for that problem, and you know the problem really well, better than anyone else. Ironically, when you solve your own problem, you begin to discover, and I've discovered over many projects, is that my problems are not unique to me. I am not a unique snowflake or butterfly. The problems that I have often are also mirrored in many people's lives. In fact, tens of thousands of people's lives. And so this is why I can build a fairly independent, small, native writing client like Desk and have tens of thousands of people buy it and send me money, which is obviously very nice. So that's where I start. Is I always begin with the idea of solving my own problem first, and I jot those things down in a notebook. There's no really clear process of by and through which I determine which one I'm going to work on. I simply choose the one that I feel, at least at the time, the most inspired to engage or build, and I start capturing my thoughts in a little bit more detail. But the most important part is actually beginning to sketch out the concept in a way that makes sense. And so that would be an exercise for you if you're an experienced builder of things or have never really tried. I would say the first thing is writing a list of all the things that are perhaps problems in your life or things that you would like to solve and itches that you would like to scratch. And these could be big itches, these could be fairly small ones. It might be useful just to start with the small ones. Like a to-do list app, for example, is a great example, is a perfect model, right? Because like there are thousands of things, to-do list apps out there. I could choose one and I think be generally happy. But the problem is I've never been able to actually land on one and commit to one long term, perhaps very much like you, because my workflow is very unique and distinct and works for me, and there's no to-do list app that can actually capture my workflow and philosophy of work in the way that I'd like it to work. So I have a problem and there are solutions, but they're not good enough. And so that's where I start. And so that might be that's the first step in building anything for me is, hey, there's a problem that I'd like to solve that is personal. Doesn't appear to be a solution that I can pull off the shelf, and I'm very much for that, by the way. You don't have to roll your own, quote unquote, roll your own or build your own product every single time. If there's one that does the job well enough, then you should use it. For a great example is Gmail. I find that Google Mail does just fine, and I have no inclination, no desire to go build my own email client or system or network. Ugh, that would be terrible. So Gmail is just fine. It works, and I'm happy with it. The Chrome browser or the Safari browser, I have no interest in building a new browser because they do just fine. So those aren't itches that I feel like I should scratch because they aren't itches at all. I'm very happy with them. So write a list of the things that, hey, these are things I'd like to solve, and that's step one. I think that's where I'll stop today because I've talked way too much, and I want to go eat these lovely hot dogs that my wife has cooked for me. But if you want to follow along, feel free to subscribe. I have no idea how this series will work, but I'll meander my way through building it, and hopefully you can join me on the journey. So that's it.